morning, all. Am I audible? Great. Good morning. So, we are starting with the prayer.
भेद भाव अपने दिल से साफ कर सके, दोस्तों से भूल हो तो माफ कर सके, झूठ से बचे रहे, सच कदम भरे, को जय करे, हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मुश्किलें पड़े तो हम पर हित न कर्म कर, साथ दे तो धर्म का, चले तो धर्म पर, खुद पे हौसला रहे, बदी से ना डरे, दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करे, हमको मन की शक्ति देना।
Good morning. Giving tribute to our great master Samuel Hahnemann for this wonderful divine science and taught us dare to be wise. Seeking blessings from our Guru, Dr. Prafull Vijayakar sirs, who have made this divine science and made homeopathy easy like mathematics with combining it with modern science. Jai Hanuman, Jai Homeopathy, Om Vijayakaraय Namah. So we are in the journey of reading the fourth book from the bookshelf of Dr. Prafull Vijayakar, the Verbatim. It is the workshop conducted by Sir in 2002 at Mahabaleshwar, and this is the script of all the workshops. Before that, we are reading the Wisdom of Master Samuel Hahnemann from the Organon of Medicine, the 6th editions. So up till now we have learned 80 aphorisms. So today we are reading the 81 aphorisms. The fact that is extremely ancient infecting agent has gradually passed in some hundreds of generations through many millions of human organisms and has thus attained an incredible development renders it in some measure conceivable how it can now display such innumerable morbid forms in a great family of mankind, particularly when we consider what number of circumstances contribute to the production of this great variety of chronic disease, the secondary symptoms of the sura. Besides the indescribable diversity of men in respect of their congenital corporeal constitution, so that it is no wonder if such variety of injurious agency acting from within and from without, and sometime continually on such a variety of organism permeated with the soric miasm, should produce an innumerable variety of defect, injuries, derangement, and sufferings which have hitherto been treated of in the old pathological work under a numerous number of special names as disease of an independent character. So in this aphorism, what Master is telling about, it is something that Master is telling that some ancient infecting agent gradually passed from some hundreds of generations through the many millions of human organisms. This is something sound that it is in a philosophical language by Master, but it is something that we are termed as we are passed some information from generation to generation to millions of human organisms. That is because of a genes. So he is understanding about the genes. So before 250 years ago, when there was no microscope, nothing to see interior in the man, with the science, but due to the philosophical wisdom, he has given the idea that it is nothing but it is the genetic things we have to understand in the man. And here also he has right that what a number of circumstances contribute to the production of this great variety of the disease. So every individual which is getting their congenital corporeal constitution. That means what the congenital corporeal constitution, that means the mother and father has given some genes. That genes is his constitutions when certain circumstances acting on them and it produce a variety of number of disease in form of chronic disease. That means here also the master is telling about this number of circumstances is some called as the epigenetic factors. That means the circumstances which gene is exposed to, and after that the gene adapt to the certain conditions, and that gene is going to perform in a different way. And how they perform when this injurious agency is working on that genes, the gene get defected, the gene get injured, gene get derangement, and then the suffering has been formed, and that suffering is termed in the pathological with the independent name. So master is telling about everything about the genes, everything about the epigenetic in this aphorism number 81. And he warned us that do not look for the name of the disease. So we will reading the footnote. Some of the cause that is exercise a modifying influence on the transformations of the sora into chronic disease manifestly depend sometime on the climate and a peculiar physical character of the place of abode, sometime on a very great variety in the physical and mental training of the youth, both of which may have been neglected, delayed, or carried to the excess, or on their abuse in the business or condition of the life in the matter of diet and regimen, fashions, manner, habit, custom of various kind. So here these circumstances make them gene to adapt into certain situations and also to defend in a different manner so that they develop incredibly into the formations of the transformation into a chronic disease or a development of the sora. So here these are the factors to be taken into considerations that we are called as the environmental factor, we are called as the mental regimen, we are called as the development of the personality, we are called as the abuse of certain substance, or we are called as a change in the maintaining cause in the form of a diet and regimen, which can lead to development of certain processes. Again, in footnote number 79, from the all the name was given. There is a name from disease, different name of the disease from ague to the apoplexy, convulsions, and many names. So to conclude that it was written, then from all this it is clear that this useless and misused name of the disease ought to have no influence on the practice of the true physician. So this is what very important aspect of understanding, that the name may be any. You need to understand what is the genetic processes going on in the individual, either as a psoric individual, either as a psychotic individual, either as a syphilitic individual, in terms of a genetic defense mechanism. And that is genetic defense mechanism. If the person is in a SORA, the genetic defense mechanism happening at the physiological level in the form of inflammation, either acute or a chronic. If this genetic mechanism is representing certain growth, that is called the psychosis, and if this genetic mechanism represents a destructive tendency like ulcerations, cracks, bleedings, and everything, that is a syphilitic. So from all this it is clear that then this useless and misused name of the disease ought to have no influence on the true practitioner or true physicians, who knows that he has to judge to the cure the disease not according to the similarity of the name of the single one of their symptom, but according to the totality of the sign of the individual state of each particular patient. That means individual state of each particular patient means, that means what the person is defending with, either defending in a psoric way, either defending in a psychotic way, either defending in a syphilitic way, whose affection in his duty carefully to investigate. That means physician has to investigate that this is just the psoric defense, that is psychotic defense, or this is, but never to give a hypothetical guess at it. So there is no, that's why it was written by the master that there is only and only three miasm, no hypothetical guess. That means you cannot make many more miasm. It is a hypothetical guess. So this is what a very warning sign from the wisdom of Master Hanuman, and he guides us that you have to take care into considerations of this process only. No name is important. There are many number of the names is there in the disease, but it is not so important for the physicians, a true physician. Again, what he encountered in aphorism number 82, although by discovery of the great source of the chronic disease. So that is what the chronic disease he has found, as also the discovery of the specific homeopathic remedy for the sora. The medicine has advanced some step nearer to the knowledge of the nature of the majority of the disease it has to cure. Yet, for settling the indication in each case of the chronic, that means psoric disease, he is called on to cure. The duty of the careful apprehensions of its ascertainable symptoms and characteristics is as indispensable for the homeopathic physicians as it was before that discovery, as no real cure of this or of other disease can take place without a strict particular treatment. That means the individualization. So whenever you want to cure the any patients, you does not give directly medicines on the basis of the symptom, but you need to strict particular treatment for that individual based on the miasmatic process, that is a chronic sora, and the individualization needed. So this individualization is based on his genetic characteristic, and that is why Sir has adapted, Dr. Vijayakar has adapted that the individualization process, a strict particular treatment, that is called a GCS, genetic constitutional simillimum, of each case of the disease. So the disease have suppose Suppose the three patients came with the same disease like a liver disorders. Three are not given the same medicine, but each case of the disease requires a strict particular treatment that is based on their genetic individuality. Only that in this investigation some difference is to made when the affection is in acute. So here he has also given the idea that how individualization has to be done in acute as well as in chronic. So what is to be taken into consideration when the affection is acute and when the affection is chronic. So there is a some difference is to be made when the affection is an acute and rapidly developed disease. When it is a chronic one, it is a different one. So seeing that in acute disease, what has to be taken into consideration? So in acute disease, the chief symptoms strike us and become evident to the senses more quickly, and hence much less time is requisite for tracing the picture of the disease, and much fewer questions are required to be asked, as almost everything is self-evident. So this is what very important aspect of whenever the patient comes to you in acute conditions, the patient is giving you every PQRS what patient is telling to you. So be careful in tracing the pictures, and you need to be very sound senses so that you can get everything which is self-evident to the patient. And in a chronic disease which has been gradually progressing for the several years, in which the symptoms are much more difficult to be ascertained. So in a chronic cases you need to ask the very particular cases, and in the letter aphorism the master has given a general guideline for the case taking, how to take the case in each individual patient. So this is what we are learning in the next days. But this aphorism tells us about that when the disease is of acute condition, the individualization is very easy because everything is self-evident and it is perceived by the physicians more quickly, and then hence the less time is required for the tracing the picture of the disease, and even the lesser question to be required to be asked. Whereas in chronic cases, everything is gradually progressing, so it takes a more time and we have to ascertain more. So we all are reading the book of Verbatim by Dr. Prafull Vijayakar. It was the workshop conducted in 2002, Mahabaleshwar. So we are reading this and we are taking the wisdom of Sir from this book, and this guide us that this book gives an idea how Sir has evolved from a simple things and to make it evident for all of us. And in the era of 2020, Sir has evolved further from this 2002. So that again, what Sir has told 20 years back, it is also same, and what Sir has evolved in 2020, it is also the same thing, but it is what the evolutions of the homeopath. So many a time the questions arises that whenever we are treating a psychosis or psychosyphilitic disease, and we have to take a more miasm that is a syphilitic, but if you don't find anything from that, then also you need to take the individual characteristic from the dispositional point of view, and then also you can prescribe the right remedy. So that is what Sir has evolved from the process, and that evolution goes into a higher version. So gradually everyone are being evolving. So we are still in the era of 2002 and we are evolving gradually. So we are starting with the chapter 4. It is again about certain about the themes about the miasm. So we are reading that. This session was taken by Dr. Prafull Vijayakar. He is a very diligent student of Dr. Prafull Vijayakar sir, and he has more than 30 years of experience with Dr. Vijayakar. So he had given a certain idea about this process. So today is going to be an exhaustive sessions on the miasm. So every time the we are putting forth the importance on the miasm. Why? Because the miasm is the only process which guide you to a cure process. So today is going to be an exhaustive sessions on the miasm. But before we go to that, I will try and tell you the history behind that miasm. How Hahnemann has arrived at the miasm. Hahnemann came across the idea of similia in 1791, but he only discovered and propagated it as a system of medicine in 1796, after the 5 years of the research. After 1796, in 1815, Hahnemann was practicing homeopathy on the basis of similia. He was experimenting drug proving, dynamizations, remedies, potencies, and he was getting better results. But something is not going right. So he, being a very fastidious, hard to please, was not happy with the result that he was getting. He did not get the solution to this problem till 1815. He was going around and round, but he knew that he had not got the right simillimum. This there was something missing. Till 1815, these observations. All medicine known to the homeopathy failed to bring about the real cure. The what the master is facing the process problem is like that. All the medicines known to the homeopathy failed to bring about the real cure. He decided to find out the real nature of the chronic disease, which still remained uncured despite the truth of similia. He was lost, wondering what is the solution. He studied his cases over and over again and studied what was happening in each and every case. He saw that the beginning was promising. Very important things. Whenever we are starting something, so he saw that the beginning was promising, the next is less favorable, and finally the hopeless processes. So this is what even we see in our practice daily also. He found that the chronic disease always return in more or less varied form with new symptoms and reappear with an increase of the complaints. This is exactly what happened with us also in our practice. He found that a disease that present before the eyes is only the fragment of the more deep-seated internal disease. There is something underneath. He concluded that the so-called separate symptoms the patient was presenting with are the separate manifestations of some original disease. All this is from the theory of chronic disease, where he has given his line of thinking, how he developed this. So he decided to take the totality of the symptom. Everything that the patient is saying is important, very important understanding. Everything that patient is saying is important. So case taking developed. He took the history not only from the patient but also started observing the patient and what that he has not told about his disease and his nature. In aphorism number 5, we have to take into consideration everything his domestic relations, his moral and intellectual character, the ailment from the exciting cause, etc. He then decided to interview the relatives. The picture started coming up in more detail. He found that the disease was present as an internal malady before it shows a local symptom that is there in the sensation of unwell being. So this is what something that started with the sensation of unwell being. The patient is sick even before the body throughout the skin eruption. So this is what sick before it happens. The whole body has already become sick. It is not a part that is sick before the first manifestation is seen. He also found out that all diseases go through three stages. First is the time of infection. This word is first mentioned by Dr. Hahnemann. There is something that disturbs the internal mechanism. Then is a period during which the whole organism is being penetrated by it and it completely pervades the full organism. First, the incubation period, and the third one, there is a breaking out of the external ailment. So, this is what you have to understand that how the disease has been started. He got the answer to his problem. The miasm and the theory of chronic disease came up at that time. So miasma means something in the air which disturb. If you read Life and Letter of Samuel Hahnemann by the Richard Hale, he write a person suffering from the smallpox wrote a letter to one of his relatives somewhere far off and posted the letter. That person there got some kind of infection similar to the smallpox. This is what he called as miasma. Something dynamic, unknown, something invisible can disturb a person at distance if the immunity is down. This is what he write in the theory of chronic disease. This new theory was very important for him. Many people did not believe in this theory as they felt that their practice would become difficult. Herring, whom we respect the most, said that he did not believe in this theory. Herring sat on the clinic of the Hahnemann. He had seen Hahnemann practicing and he said this. He said that Dr. Hahnemann has told me dare to be wise. do not follow anyone blindly, then how can I follow him blindly also? So that is what Herring is. He said this when Hanuman was alive. The law of similar is above all, and if the remedy is right, it has to act. So very important. Law of similar is all about. If remedy is right, it has to act. All other is theory. This were his statement. If you read Herring's guiding symptom, you will see he gives a lot of value to how the tissue, the nerves are affected, and what kind of pathology or generals in toto, which is nothing but the miasm. So Boger says the constitutional remedy, if chosen rightly, must cover the miasm as well. So this is what Boger is telling us. A separate anti-miasmatic remedy need not be searched for. Many people give thuja, madorinum for psychotic miasm, sorinum sulfur for the soric miasm, tuberculinum for the tubercular miasm, etc. So that the picture become more clear. But Boger says the right remedy must cover the symptoms and miasm. So this is what well said. Now we talk about the Kant. Kant once in his classroom during his lecture mentioned when the indicated remedy fail. Kant has mentioned this when the indicated remedy fail, give opium or antidote, etc. We have heard this many times. One of his students, Dr. Gladwin, approached him and said, if the law of similar is right, then how can the indicated remedies fail? The question is very valid. Dr. Kent realized his mistake and said, as we have grown old, we have started using this sentence very loosely. Thank you for bringing this to my notice. What I actually wanted to say is, when the apparently indicated remedy fails, then you have to prescribe. This indicated remedy never fails. Usually it fails when the miasm is not taken into consideration. So this is what very important understanding that we have to consider the miasm. So what are the miasm? The significance, the types and the applications in the practice. So miasm is the prevailing predispositions which predetermine the nature, pace, depth and the kind of the damage at the functional or the structural level. The remedy has to cover even this, not only the totality of symptoms. So this is what very important. The genetic determines the miasm. Harrison says the genetic variations in the normal people account for much of the normal variation in the trait, such as the height, intelligence, and the blood pressure. This genetic difference also determines the ability of each individual to meet environmental challenges, including those that produce disease. So miasm and genetics are the same. All human disease can be considered to be an interaction between an individual unique genetic makeup and the environment. The SORA, psychosis, and syphilis, this correspond to the three main cell functions, the homeostasis, organizations, and the physiology. SORA, psychosis has to do with the growth, multiplication, and reproduction, and dysfunction at this level produce a psychotic miasm. Any dysfunctions at the level of defense gives rise to the syphilitic miasm. So this is what the basic understanding of miasm. Already we have read this in the book of end of my assumptions of the miasm, but again we are revising because the miasm has given a more important. Now the question is why homeopath fail. Many a time we came across that we are giving our best of knowledge and we are giving best of our effort to treat the patient, and after giving medicines we fail desperately. So why homeopath fails? So Dr. Vijayakar has given the answer in this. In his book of chronic disease, Dr. Hahnemann was investigation why there was a failure. So again, Hahnemann also facing the same process. Why he was not getting the result. The cases came back with the temporary emulations with a big bang. So after years of experimenting, he came to the conclusion that there was something deep down within which resulted in the disease become a chronic. When this happened, the same materia medica become useless. Once this miasmatic approach is clear in your mind, then all the materia medica become child's play. Why are homeopaths failing in pathological or terminal cases? The question is like because they do not understand the miasm. If you know the miasm, you know which symptom to give importance to. So if you put that all the symptoms in your computer, you get a nonsense remedy out. It is GIGO, garbage in and garbage out. So whenever you are entering anything into software, so that way software gives you a certain set of symptoms and that gives you the remedy. So whenever you put anything which is inside, you get what is from that. So what sir has said, if you put the nonsense symptoms into computer, the computer gives the nonsense remedy too because we do not understand the miasm. So every homeopath comes to a different remedy. This is not what Hahnemann meant about the individualizations. I have heard the professor saying in the class, just read miasm for the exam and then forget it. This was the college days. Many a time you also experience same. I also experienced the same. I started studying my cases because of the failure. We do not want mushrooming of the miasm. It will be like mushrooming of the antibiotic, like vaccines, and become obsolete after some time. To remind you, homeopathy, homeopathic principle, and our remedy are as effective today as they were 250 years back. So same, there is no resistance to any remedies. You never heard that Naxomica and Belladonna will not work now. They are obsolete and the body has developed a resistance. Nothing. This is not like that. The wonder drug of the yesteryear, the penicillin, is obsolete today. The homeopathic remedies still work in a single dose. So, who is more scientific, the homeopath or the allopath? Whether you go to the moon or Mars, Nux vomica will remain Nux vomica only. Then why we are not getting the result? So, this is the questions comes into every homeopath. There is some flaw in our applications of the principle, and the major flaw is that we neglect the theory of chronic disease. So, this is what very important understanding that you need to take into consideration. Again, what Master has given the wisdom of theory of chronic disease, you have to see it in the light of the modern science. Then and then you can correlate it with the nowadays. So it is the introduction. Saneman says that I am afraid that my follower will not understand me properly. This great discovery will go in a vain. He was already apprehensive about it. He was the one who has also claimed my discovery of law of similar is not so important as this discovery, the chronic disease. So this is what Master Hahnemann has telling that this discovery of miasm is most important rather than the discovery of homeopathy. Hahnemann also has propagated this law. It existed even before that. This was already known to Indian much before Hahnemann, but he made it into science and propagated it. We all know the poison kills the poison. So this is what the law of similia. But we all know from the ancient times of the Ayurveda, but he is the man who has made it into science and propagated. That is why the homeopathy is established. The reactions of the every delegate to my lecture is different, but I have no complaint as they are the slave of their miasm and their genes, and their reactions is according to that. So Sora was equated to the scabi or itch, psychosis was equated to anything that happened after gonorrhea, and the syphilis to the chancre. This was after careful investigation. On the page number of 34 of the chronic disease, he mentions after years of experience and research in the Europe and all other continents, I have come to the conclusion that all the chronic disease have only three origin, and that is psora, psychosis, and the syphilis. So this is what that's why the master is telling that only three miasm. The allopaths try to find out the pathology and the name the disease, and according to the pathology or the symptoms, the patient is treated. When they do not find any pathology, they do not know what to do, and when they tell them now go to the homeopathic doctor, we too have to know the pathology to know the miasm. If he has some itching, redness, he belongs to Sora. If he has some warts, he belongs to psychosis. And if he has some ulcer or a destruction, he belongs to the syphilitic miasm. So for us, there is only three diseases and no vast number of This is what we have read in the aphorism number 81, that name of the disease is not important. So for us, there is only three diseases: the sora, psychosis, and the syphilis. Sorry. To understand the miasm, we have to understand the universe. The universe is the bundle of energy. There are constant energetic forces acting on us and keeping us on this earth. We are also made up of the energy and are a part of it. We have an energy cycle. The Einstein equated is equal to energy to mass into velocity. E is equal to mc square. So everything is energy, and we all are related each other via energy. Man has to follow the law of energy. This is the energy can neither be created. The first law is energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only transfer from one form to another. The second law is all the system in this universe proceed in one direction for the degradation to add to the entropy of the universe in the given conditions of the temperature and pressure. Unless we die, we can never give energy to the world for productions. Nothing is permanent in this world. It has to die and act as a fuel for the future productions. So the basic unit of the cell, that is equated to the amoeba, a single cellular animal. It had three definite functions to perform: the respiration, eat, and with the help of oxygenations and carbon dioxide, giving rise to the energy to live and perform the duty. This is the basic functions to produce the energy. The second functions is the reproductions or the multiplications only by the mitosis 1 is to 2. Meiosis is only in the sexual cell. The first was organization of the all the resource to give energy. The cell now is ready to fight. It knows how to survive and make its species survive. It is constantly attacked by the forces, the only the fittest survival. So the third function, the defense, came up to protect the organism from the hostile forces. This is just a hypothesis that it coincides with the generations, organizations, and the defense, making it God. So it is something like God there is in the every cell. Every cell has these three basic functions: the organization problem, that is problem in the functions and the system involved in generating the energy, the respiratory, previous, excretory, and the skin. This corresponds to the discovery disorder of the sora. Whenever there is a functional disturbance in these are the soric. If you are not going to supply nutrition, the body is going to convert and prepare the energy. It takes protein, carbohydrate, and fats from the cells, so people become marasmic. The toxin have to be thrown out. If they are not thrown out, we become ill and suffer from the toxic effect. This means that these three functions of taking in food and air and metabolism, generating energy and throwing out toxins are the continuous process. In our Indian mythology, God is a trinity, the Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. Again, in the analogy, but see the resemblance. Vishnu is always has a wheel on hand. The Brahma is psychosis, give rise to the human being production. So he is the lord of psychosis. Whenever there is any mythological war, everyone goes to Shiva to defend himself. Even Ravana, Lakshman, Ram all had to take his help. So Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh are also symbolic of generator, organizer, and the destroyer. So Sora is something which is going on and on. It is the constant process. Whenever there is a breach or a groove in this continuity, then we call it as a sora. A groove in continuity, something continuous has been broken. The disorder in the functions of reproduction is the psychosis. The cell multiply 1 is to 2. But when this mitotic factor changes, then too many cells are formed, excessive tumor growth, accumulations, which correspond to the psychosis. Whenever there is a disorders in the defense mechanism, there is a destruction. This corresponds to the syphilitic miasm. Hahnemann has written in 1813 or letter to one of his friends saying that I have been criticized by people when I say that Sora is not the each. I never said Sora is each or the might. This is misunderstanding of my concept. One of his followers made a ridiculous remark. He said that in very dangerous disease caused by a mite, I can pick up the mite with the forceps, throw it out, and wash the whole thing with the soap. Tell Dr. Hahnemann I can cure all the major disease with the forceps and soap. This was a very bad remark made by one of his followers who did not understand him well. Hahnemann has specifically quoted that it is not the itch which is the disease or the cause of the disease. On the contrary, each scabies or a mite is the resultant of the certain changes which have taken place in the tissue itself, giving rise to some toxic product and becoming an invitation to the disease. Each is secondary to what changes have occurred in the tissue. This is given in a life and letter of Hahnemann. He says very nicely that sora or the itch or a mite can occur in people who have a nutritional deficiency or a respiratory deficiency in the tissue. So what he mean by sura was that whenever in one cell or a tissue there is an invitation to mite or a itch, it is because the functions of respirations or a nutrition is affected. The metabolism is not proper and the toxic products are formed in the tissue. He did not have mean to prove this at that time. Disease is any departure from the health, particular destructive process in the organism, and any harmful or destructive conditions. This is the allopathic understanding. What Hahnemann says that disease are of a two type. They are of acute or chronic. So we have to categorize each and everything. As I have taken the question and answer sessions in which I have suggested that you have to first categorize the disease in two form, acute or chronic. So acute disease are those which come suddenly, last for a short time, and either end in the death or a recovery, and always a temporary. In a chronic disease are those which goes on and finally end in the destructions of the persons. In the book of chronic disease, he says all the chronic disease of the mankind must have their foundations origin in the chronic miasm. In Europe and in other continent, only three chronic miasms are found. The disease is caused by which manifest through local symptoms. The true natural chronic disease are those that arises from the chronic miasm. This is also given in aphorism number 78. Already we have read. Why there are only three miasms? This traces the origin of the chancre to the syphilis, pigwa to the psychosis, and each to the sora. So let us see what modern science and a Robin's pathology gives us what Hahnemann has said 200 years ago. Now, with the advent of the genetic and molecular biology, they say that the disease or the disorder arises in our organ when the cells or a tissue that organs are in the disorder. The cell and tissue are responsible for order or disorders. Any disorders of the cell is due to its fight for survival, and inflammation is a defense mechanism. So every cell when attacked wants to live and defend itself against the hostile processes. So when they start defending for survival, disease or a disorder arises. Now the whole concept changes. Now we still go further and broaden our view. Everything in this world wants to live and to defend. During this defense, it sacrifices something. If you are attacked, you start using your weapon. Some people defend themselves physically, some have money, so they employ someone to defend them. Some use weapon and destroy other to defend themselves. So every living being wants to survive as far as possible. Defense mechanism in each cell is represented out into the world in the form of disease. The disease is nothing but an expression of the defensive mechanism. Again, inflammation is nothing but the defense mechanism which is exhibited. Now we will understand how every cell will defend itself. Some cells defend themselves by sacrificing the respiratory or nutritional functions. Some cells defend by sacrificing or making changes and adapting the reproductive systems. And some cells defend by bringing out the destruction. So defense is the key word for the miasm. There are three different types of defense which a living being has If I attack someone, he will try to take only small steps which are not basically structural but only physiological or physical. He will just try to avoid any irritations or nagging. This will bring out a slight biochemical changes. So the cell is trying to bring about some biochemical changes by sacrificing the nutrition or the oxygenational function, thereby giving rise to inflammations. This also could cause irritability and hyper or hyposensitivity, rubor, dolor, choler, tumor, and loss of function. These are the sign of inflammation. All these changes are observed in the physiological defense of any cell. So every cell defends itself by an inflammatory process or hypersensitivity or irritability and finally loss of function. So all disease which falls in inflammatory stage due to chemical, biochemical or physiological changes are psoriatic disease. When this bacteria or a virus go on attacking and nothing is going to change, then the organism puts on a pad or a thick shield so that he is protected. The primary physiological defense is brought about by sacrificing the nutrition and respiration, and this is called as the psoriatic defense. Psoriatic disease will be dermatitis, rhinitis, tonsillitis, all itis. There is the inflammations, hypersensitivity, the functional disorders, the nervous system, and the endocrine system. Even anxiety, neurosis, the epilepsy. Epilepsy can come under psoriatic disease. When the first function is impaired to defend itself, it is psoriatic disease. It is more in the respiratory tract, the GIT, the urinary tract, and includes all the functional derangement and hyper or hyposensitivity. Tumor means not growth, but edema. Whenever the bacteria are trying to injure a tonsil, we take antibiotic or treat with the Moxol, Baraita, Calcarea, floor, etc. Then in duration, the chronic inflammation takes place. This is not SORA because there is a lymphocytosis. Now cells start feeling danger to their life despite the physiological changes. So the cells shift its gear at the genetic level and secondary effects are now evolved. These are essentially a structural or morphological. This morphological defense is of a two types. Either the cell says, I will thicken myself so that I do not get hurt. It is better that I destroy this part so that I do not get hurt. So there are the two processes. This is the mind of the cell. I will thicken myself. This is I do not get hurt. This is psychosis, and it is better that I destroy this part so that I do not get hurt. This is a syphilis, like a shoe bite. First time in a shoe bite, it leads to the inflammation. This is sora. Once this continue, you get the hard skin there, like a corn. And if you still continue to wear those shoes, you get an ulcer. So this is what the process is going on. The change of the gear of the defense from sura to psychotic to the syphilitic. These three defenses can apply to every living being. There are still few bifurcations within. The morphological defense can be constructive or destructive. This construction can be of a two type, the over construction or the under construction. If the hostile stimulus still continue, the cell defend itself by the strengthening itself by either accumulations or multiplication. So there is a excess. There can be two phases of psychosis, either excess or a shallow, because mitosis can be disturbed in a two manner, either from 1 is to 2 to 1 is to 10 or 1 is to 2 to 1 is to 1. So it is a 1 is more production, 1 is less production. Excess multiplications of the cell takes place, which generally is always by the mitosis except in the sexual cell. One cell divides into many, giving rise to tumor growth, thickening, accumulation, which grow at the cost of neighboring cells or the tissue, and this corresponds to the psychosis excess. The other psychosis is called psychosis shallow. Some example of psychosis excess are the obesity, the excess accumulation of the fat, warts on the skin tag or skin dead, excess accumulation of the skin, edema, excess accumulation of the water, fibroids, atherosclerosis, indurations, excess accumulation of the fibrin, hyperlipidemia, excess accumulation of the fat, darkening of the skin, accumulation of melanocytes, keloid, excessive proliferations, Now, what about the renal stone? It is also the excessive accumulations, diabetes, excess accumulations of the sugar. Mind you, it could be the result of the islet of the Langerhans having impaired blood flow due to constrictions of the blood vessel. This is psoric. It is attention diabetes. If it is due to the atherosclerosis, it is a psychotic diabetes. And if it is because of the destructions of the cell, it is a syphilitic diabetes, which is difficult to reverse. So what is shallow? These are the example of the psychosis excess. Here it was given as diabetes of three types. What is shallow? Hypopigmentation, not vitiligo, not destructions of the melanocytes as in the tinea, dwarfism, less of the height, small height, both are the psychotic. Hypofunctioning of the whole organ, even kidney, atrophic kidney also come under the psychotic shallow. This is just the keyword you go on applying to all the disease. When elastin is less, there is a relaxation, therefore disease like a varicose vein, prolapse of uterus, piles, ptosis of the viscera, even in the heart, prolapse of the mitral valve, etc. So the constrictions or a prolapse both are psychotic. Here we need to know the differentiation. It is essential for us to know the pathology that patient is suffering from so that we get an idea what is the type of the defense of that individual. If I can correct this defense mechanism, correct the loss of the particular function, which he has suffered, I will be able to help the patient better. Also, due to the decreased fibrin, one might even got dilatations, excessive leukocytes, or leukemia is psychotic. Shallow psychosis will give you a shortness of the height, tinea versicolors, relaxed muscles and tendons, easy spraining tendency, Duchenne muscular dystrophy. First psychotic, then syphilitic. First false enlargement, then destructions of the muscles. Hypothyroids, hypotension, etc. All hypo and slow. Now the third defense, this is the form of destruction. When this happens, there are two types of the changes that will take place. One is called as apoptosis and another is necrosis. Apoptosis, a cell goes on killing itself. Some genetic changes take place in the cell where the genetic code changes for the self destruction of the cell. It is called as a programmed cell death. Necrosis, the body tries to cut off the particular part and throw it away as in a gangrene. So we have a two distinct type of syphilitic remedy. There are some like a aurum mat who would like to kill themselves. They have anxiety concerns and they never want to kill someone else. While there are other who will be killing and destroying others and they will not hurt themselves like mercury, anacardium and fluoric acid. So those who kill themselves are going into a disorders called as autoimmune disorders. So an intelligent homeopath know when there is a necrosis going on somewhere, I should avoid giving a apoptic remedy and vice versa. These are the two distinctive tendencies. So understand the type of the disease the patient is suffering from. Therefore, susceptibility to disease is also to be included in the holistic approach. Hahnemann has already written everything in aphorism number 74. The extract of this in order to maintain the life, this inimical destructive attack, it must produce revolutions in the organism either by deprived some part of the irritability, sensitivity, or exalt to the excessive degree. Second, it causes the dilatations and contraction, relaxations, or indurations is in the form of psychosis. And thirdly, even a total destruction of the certain part to develop a faulty organism, alterations here and there in the interior, and cripple the body in order to preserve the organism. So this is something that you need to keep in mind that everything which is given here is the miasmatic process. This aphorism telling us 200 years in advance what Robin has given us a new discovery that every cell try to defend itself. The old world has understood Hahnemann's theory. Today, only 200 years after he had discovered it, And we, in spite of belonging to this rich heritage of scientific science, we are still following the allopathic understanding of treating the disease in man and not the man in disease. Gene also gives rise to the mind. The miasm is a taint or a pollution. Those constitutions which have genetic tendency to defense by disorders in the physiological or metabolic activity by sacrificing metabolism or physiology are the soric constitution. The constitution having tendency to defend by disorders in the mitosis or meiosis are the psychotic constitution. And the constitutions having a tendency to defend or disorders in the defensive mechanism are the syphilitic constitution. We know that our gene are tainted to disorders inherited from the father and mother, so we inherited these tendencies. Therefore, whichever miasm is more prominent, we call it as a birth miasm or the miasm of that constitution. How do we correlate it to the disease? This means that whenever a soric constitution fall ill, maximum time they will with fight out with only the physiological defense. That is the remedy like sulfur, naxomica, belladonna in soric state will defend themselves for a long time by physiological defense. The psychotic constitutions will immediately switch gear and go into accumulative defense. That is the remedy like the thuja. As soon as they develop some respiratory problems or some inflammation, tend to go into thickening and the tumor very easily. Thuja has a frail sensations. This is the personification of psychosis itself. The danger to life is too much for it, and it immediately start covering and thickening up. Therefore, thuja, madorinum, calcarea, fluoric acid, barytagam, all psychotic constitutions pass immediately from sora to psychotic state. Remedies like mercury, fluoric acid, anacardium, syphilinum, nitric acid changes here from sora state to the destruction. So even in an ordinary inflammation can lead straight to the ulcerations and destruction. So it is very common to see young people or young children who are psychotic in constitution go into tumor and thickening at the age of 14 or 15 years. They are early suppressed to psychosis. In psoriatic constitution, you go on giving them an amount of antibiotic or even wrong homeopathic medicine, they will stay good getting the same tonsillitis etc because their genes are giving them the physiological defense. In childhood the first defense is always psoric, so the child always develop a skin rash, itching etc. After vaccinations or anything, this when suppressed gives rise to respiratory infection. In infant and children you have a sore. Then the sora goes deeper and deeper, and as the child become a boy, he start getting pain in the joints and muscles. He is still in the sora. So psoric disease are found more in the lower age group. Body has to go through this two or three defense throughout the life. When the constitution changes gear from sora to psychotic and then from psychotic to syphilitic, there is an age barrier in the normal circumstances. For example, sulfur is a polycast trimiasmatic, so usually more commonly sulfur in childhood is soric. When they become older, around 18-20 years, they become psychotic and then they become syphilitic. When we suppress, we enhance the miasm within and complete this cycle in a shorter time and child goes faster from sora to psychosis. For example, if we treat a frank psoriatic child with a wrong medicine for say tonsillitis and it get cured, he is happy that he is now able to drink cold water. Very soon he start getting tired while playing, and at the age of 14-15 years, you find he has high blood pressures and he complains of chest pain. You have pushed him from tonsillitis to the hypertension. If you still repeat the same partial minimum, you will now push him from psychosis to syphilis. His hypertension now causes less blood supply to the kidney and then start getting damaged. The atherosclerotic causing hypertension is now increasing because of our suppression, increasing the accumulations of the psychosis within. By the age of 35 to 40 years, the whole picture of sora, psychosis, and syphilis is over. So we need to understand what we are doing to our patient, where this man is going. So you should have an idea of defense mechanism. If you want to help the patient to defend himself from the disease, it is very important for us to know at which stage of defense this man is. So this is very important. and how he is representing his disease, how his body is throwing out symptoms. We will now see how this same thing is seen in the mind. So this is what we have to keep in mind every time. So we conclude our day here for this session. So again, we are repeating the same things of understanding miasm, because why miasm is important. When you consider miasm into each and every case, then and then you are better able to treat the patients in a better way. So hope you got the great idea of understanding this. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you all. So we conclude the day today. Thank you. Thank you all.